All right, ladies and gentlemen, where I left off, I was talking about the progression in this case of the care of Sheila Murray. What I want to talk about is how Karen Murray, as the evidence has indicated, I talked about before we broke, Karen Murray for a while appeared to be doing all right and taking care of her mother, and that's what the records indicate. What's the evidence show in this case? That between Tracy Roman's February 2018 visit to Sonia Henry's July 2019 visit, just a few weeks before the events that led us here, there were no concerns about the care of Sheila Murray. Nobody seemed to have any worry about that. Miss Romans from the view of a nurse practitioner and Miss Henry from the view of a daughter. They came in, saw nothing of a concern. She looked to be being cared for adequately, even though everybody noticed, and you heard that from Miss Henry, from Miss Romans both, that again her decline was ongoing. This gradual decline just kept on going, and anybody that's dealt with dementia knows dementia doesn't get better. It's the mental impairment, the physical impairments that often come with it. I mean, that doesn't get better. Very rare that you have somebody that's had multiple strokes that's going to get better from that either. Sonia Henry talked about in February 2019 she came to visit her mother for her birthday, and that even by that point her mother looked frail, looked like she lost a lot of weight, that she was having trouble eating. She'd become nonverbal by that point, and I'd point out that is before Tracy Roman's last visit, that when Sonia came up and saw her mother, she commented on the state of her, that she wasn't worried necessarily about the condition that she was in, but she couldn't help noticing that her mother looked like she was frail. And with all the multitude of problems that she had, I suppose that's to be expected. But I bring that up to counter this idea that she wasn't being fed, that nobody was trying to give her any kind of nourishment. Just due to the progression of the disease, the conditions that she suffered from, it was becoming harder and harder and harder to get her to take nourishment. To be honest, I wasn't clear exactly what it was that Miss Romans came in the home and did for Miss Murray, but she documented these things. I don't know, it sounded to me as though she came in and she checked on certain things, kind of went through, I guess, a checklist of what she was looking for, and generated a report about her condition, and then was waiting for the next visit. I mean, she certainly wasn't concerned, she said, at any point with the condition that Miss Murray was in, that she would have called Adult Protective Services if she was. And I want to clarify something else too that I heard about in the state's first close about this. Miss Romans didn't come every 3 months. She came in February of 2018, in March of 2018, in April of 2018, and then there was a gap to December of 2018, then on to March. So it wasn't like she was on a 90-day window where she was coming back. It wasn't unheard of for there to be a gap in time that she came. And as she said, that gap between April and between December, she didn't see anything that was of a concern to her whenever she came back. The state's implied to some degree that there's something about Karen Murray canceling that June visit that is somehow, I don't know if it's supposed to be nefarious or it's supposed to be something, why it is that's supposed to be such a key thing here that she canceled that visit, as though Karen Murray's not allowed to get sick herself, that she's not allowed to do that. And she didn't reschedule the visit, and we've heard that. But in terms of the condition of her mother, her sister visits a few weeks later, and again sees her mother, sees nothing about her condition that alarms her. So there's nothing about her missing that appointment in June that has any indication that there was something wrong, that she was trying to hide something or anything of that nature, because her sister saw her a couple weeks later and said she looked normal. She looked like there was nothing out of the ordinary there. Now, the idea that Miss Romans would just come out whenever, there's something she said that I want to draw your attention to there, that she could just come whenever you call. What did she say whenever they talked about decisions for care in the home? when she talked to Karen, and Karen was her only point of contact. What did she say? I have to talk to my dad about it. I have to see what my dad says about it. Again, we circle back to that same thing where Tony Murray is the decision maker here. That there wasn't some unlimited access of care. I mean, the truth is, and everybody knows this, like, insurance has limits on what it's going to pay. I mean, that's not, you talk about common sense. I mean, precious few people have unlimited access to care. And if this family had had that, I'm sure we would have seen something to that degree. But again, what Ms. Romans told you, the same thing you heard over and over again, the decisions on what to do went to Tony. That even if Karen thought something needed to be done, it had to go through Tony first, because Tony's the source of income in the house. He's the decision maker in the house. Doesn't matter what Karen thinks she needs. If Dad doesn't think they can afford it, doesn't think she needs it, it's not going to happen. So I ask you this, though, in talking about the scope of time here, the timeline we're talking about, just what we've heard about here in this case, from January, February of 2018 to July 2019, and between the Sonia Henry's visit in July 2019 to just 4 or 5 weeks later, July 4th to about the second week of August, is it reasonable to believe that somewhere in all that time, in that 4 or 5 weeks, that Karen Murray or her brother just suddenly stopped caring about their mom, just suddenly stopped loving their mom, that they went from the situation where the records indicate that she was being taken care of at least adequately. It wasn't a concern. It wasn't something we go call Adult Protective Services about. Is it somehow reasonable to believe that in that few weeks they suddenly just decided, let's just let it go. We don't care anymore. We're not going to take care of Mom anymore. We're just going to let it go. I would submit to you that it is not. So what do you do when you're in a situation like Karen Murray was? You try to do the best you can with what you have. Now, Karen Murray, as you've heard, and her brother, neither one had any more than a basic knowledge of how to care for their mother. And as problems advanced, as Sheila Murray's condition declined, as those problems got worse, it went from something that they could handle to something that they could not handle. You heard some talk about Miss Roman saying her advice regarding bed sores. And all I heard her say was, and all the record indicated was, is that she told Karen, you need to keep her dry and clean. But in terms of why that is, to explain to somebody why it's so important, what can happen. I mean, of course, she realized bed sores can develop and we need to try to turn her if we can. But in terms of how serious that those can get, it would seem that the evidence indicates that she didn't know that. Why do I say that? What'd she say to Agent Pritchard whenever she was talking to him? I didn't realize that bed sores could be life-threatening. I didn't know that. That would indicate that Miss Romans didn't have a conversation with her indicating, hey, listen, this is what can happen if you don't do that. Miss Romans said, this is what my usual spiel is that I give people about this. This is what I usually tell people, but I can't sit here and tell you that that's what I communicated to Karen Murray. And that's what she said. She couldn't remember the extent of what she said. So in terms of all this education that Karen Murray supposedly received from this, that's not what you heard. Now, you heard a lot, of course, from medical professionals in this case, and it was clear, I think, from just about everybody that testified, that they could spot problems quickly, big and small. They could spot problems. They knew to recognize what a problem was. They could recognize the course of it, how severe that a problem could get, what needed to be done about a problem, how to remedy that, and what resources are necessary to make that happen. Now, that's the comparison that I was pointing out in the beginning and opening and all that, compared to what the Murrays and specifically Karen had. Karen doesn't have that knowledge. Karen doesn't know these advanced things that these medical professionals know. When these problems come up, does she even know what the problem is? Does she know what the severity of a problem is? Does she know what needs to be done about it? Does she know what resources are necessary for it? Does she even know the questions to ask? Because I know the state would say, well, she could call somebody or something, but if you don't even know the questions to ask, then what are you supposed to do? Who are you supposed to do that? Who's supposed to tell you what the questions are? You heard, for example, Dr. Cook talk about hospitals and nursing homes having the pads present and available for bed sores. That's just common practice. That's just what they do, because they know through their knowledge, through their education, through their experience, what can happen when bed sores go untreated for a long time. These places have to deal with the liability from that thing. So of course they're going to be on the ball about it. Of course they're going to, not only from what they know, but just because they don't want it to be some liability issue. They're going to try to take care of that as quickly as they can. But that's because they know what can happen if these things go untreated. And as Karen said, I didn't know that this could be something that was life-threatening. She didn't have that knowledge. You talk about her mother's contractures and what had started to occur to Sheila as she got older and when her arms started to draw up. What do you do when you're in that situation and you're Karen Murray? You heard paramedic Jenkins talk about whenever he came to the scene and found her arms the way they were, that he didn't want to pull them away from her because he was afraid he would hurt her. Now that's a complete stranger who sees that situation and sees how tight her arms are, how stiff her arms are, and he doesn't want to hurt her. That's a complete stranger to him. He doesn't know her. What are you doing after your own mother? What do you do when you've got a person who you love, you're here in the family home where you grew up, where you have memories of this person, when you were a child, memories you have with them, the food she put on the table, laughs you had, things you had together, and then you see this person here that you love and that you care about. What do you do when you've got a situation like that when a person's arms are drawn up? If a complete stranger won't pull those arms away because he's afraid of hurting, then what do you think somebody's firstborn child's going to do? What's reasonable to believe that they will do? If you're a layperson and you don't know and you don't understand that leaving her alone in that situation and not doing something about those arms, that you don't understand what it might lead to, like the injury that occurred to her right breast, where, as you heard Dr. Cook talk about, it was essentially pinned under those arms as they were contracted up. If you don't understand, if all you're trying to do is to make your mother comfortable, and you don't want to add to her pain, but you don't understand that what you're doing is going to make matters worse, then how do you fix that? What do you do about that? How do you do that with your own mother when you're just trying to make her comfortable, but by your own ignorance of what can happen with these things, you end up making things worse? Not through malice, not because you want to, but just because you don't want to hurt her. You don't want to cause her more pain. You're there in the moment, day after day, and you're trying to make your mother comfortable, even as she's declining. The states talk some about rehabilitation and physical therapy. Again, those are things that cost money. Those are things that are going to have to run through Dad. Those are things that Tony Murray is going to have to decide. Karen doesn't have a say in that. Michael doesn't have a say in that. That's Dad's department. I'm going to talk about, along the same lines, when you talk about repositioning Sheila. You heard Karen Murray talk to Agent Pritchard about how hard it was to move her mother, that she'd gotten stiff, and that she tried to roll her over, but her mother would continue to roll back to the same side. That she'd try to roll her over, and she'd continue to roll back. And that she'd try to keep her from rolling over, but she'd just keep going back to the same place. What do you do when your own mother is fighting you? When you're doing what you think is the right thing, but she continues to fight you, and you're there in the moment, day after day, and all you want to do is make her comfortable. And she keeps rolling back to this position because it seems like it makes her comfortable. What do you do when you're her? Do you keep fighting your own mother? Do you keep forcing her to do things? Which is why it'd be a little easier if she was in a nursing home, because they could do that. They know, number one, that it's necessary to do that. It's necessary to reposition a person. But number two, they're not dealing with their own mother. They're not dealing with the prospect and the fear of hurting their own mother. And again, it's something that by trying to make your mom more comfortable, you end up causing problems you don't even realize are going to happen because you don't know any better. You don't know the extent of how those problems how far those problems can go. You're trying to, there in the moment, trying to make her feel better, trying to make her comfortable because she seems to want to lay in this position, but you don't realize that you're making things worse. What do you do? You know, your mother gets to the point where she won't eat. You have to fight her. You heard the paramedics talk about she fought them when they were trying to put oxygen on her. So you're there with her day after day, and she's fighting you when you try to feed her. Some days she won't eat. You heard that. Even Sonia talked about that, said that during the time she would talk to Karen that there would be conversations where she would say, you know, Mom didn't eat today. All I could do is get her to drink today. You're having to fight her all the time to try to give her the care, what little degree you know how to give her, and you're having to fight her the whole time. What do you do when you're in that situation? And Dr. Lawson talked about what happens at a hospital when that occurs, that they move a person to palliative care, comfort care. I mean, that's not end-of-life care, but, you know, it's certainly a degree more where you're trying to where it's literally what it says, you're trying to make someone comfortable. They know that, and they know how to do that. They recognize that. What do you do when you're at home with your mother and she won't eat? Like what Karen told Agent Pritchard. Do you pry her jaws open? Do you force her to eat? How do you do that? And the truth is, as unpleasant as it is to consider the context of it, the fact that she had, you know, that when the paramedics came out to the scene, that she had a diaper that had feces in it, that had urine in it, it would indicate that to some degree she was getting nourishment, because she wouldn't have those things if she wasn't getting some kind of nourishment. What do you do when your father, who you love and you respect, steadfastly refuses to put your mother in a nursing home? You know, and you heard Sonia talk about the continuing conversations about that, and then he was adamant about not putting her in a nursing home because he's worried that if he does that and that house goes up as collateral, that house is going to be the next one on the block that's vacant. What do you do when that's in your dad's head? How do you convince him otherwise? If that's part of trying to protect your mother by, dad won't do what I think she needs, so in part of protecting it, what do? Call the cops on your dad? You have somebody that wore the same uniform as him for 26 years come and haul him away? What's that going to fix? Because now your financial situation has gotten much worse. As the only person with any kind of financial income there, the only person bringing in money is out of the picture now. Mom's not suddenly getting better. You don't win the lottery whenever you do that. Somebody's got to pay the bills. Somebody's got to pay for that insurance that your dad's already wrestling with to try to get care for. You don't pay that insurance, eventually they're going to have no sympathy or hesitation for cutting you off. Eventually your mom ends up a ward of the state, and now that house is squarely the exact thing that your dad didn't want to happen is the exact situation that you're in, where that house is now squarely in the sights of satisfying whatever debt that your mother's care runs up as a ward of the state. And these are all things, it's not clear Karen had any idea that she would know what happened. For a family as close-knit as this, to do something like, calling the police on your dad or reporting him or something would be unthinkable. And it's not realistic what we know about the family. But when the decision maker in the house, when they won't budge, what do you do? What do you do? You try to make the best of the situation. The friction that's there between what you want to do to try to take care of your mother and what you're trying to do to appease your father and what he wants, you try to do the best you can with what you have. And that's what Karen Murray was trying to do. It hasn't been controverted in here that Karen loved her mother. And again, the records show that she was trying to take care of her mother the best that she could, with the very limited knowledge, the very limited resources that she had, in a situation where her voice and her opinion didn't matter. So what do? For a while it was good enough, until that line got crossed and it wasn't anymore. And you don't even know you've crossed it. You don't even know the day has come when what you're capable of is no longer good enough. Again, is it reasonable to believe that somewhere between July 4th of 2019 and the second week of August 2019, that after all this time and after all this effort that she'd put into trying to take care of her mother the best she could, that she suddenly just stopped caring, that she suddenly stopped loving her mother? Is that reasonable to believe that that's what happened? You heard her sister say that she didn't think that any of her family members, if they'd known about the condition of that ankle, that they wouldn't have done something about it immediately. And for everything else you've heard, there's nothing that's been put in here that says they knew about it. that they knew the condition of that ankle, that they had reason to know that that ankle was broken and that she was just laying there like that. No matter how much the state tries to say otherwise, there's been no proof put on to show that they knew about that they knew that's what was happening to her. And that they just let her lay there like that. Because as soon as they realized the severity of it, they called for help. With regards to her laying there in when they found her in this diaper, that's this full diaper, as you've heard about, something that Michael Murray said about to Agent Pritchard when he was talking about that. He said they got her up to change her, realized what was going on with the ankle. They realized this and laid her back down on the bed because they didn't think they could clean her up. So the reason they found her laying on a bed in a full diaper is because they didn't think they could clean her. After they realized what was going on with this ankle, they laid her back down. That's why she's laying there in a full diaper. They realized she needed to be changed. They were attempting to, and that's when they saw the ankle. They laid her back down because they didn't think they could clean her after they saw what they saw. Dr. Cook talked about the pressure sores on Sheila Murray's buttock and something akin to diaper rash in her genital region. She said that the pressure sores on her buttock were in the beginning stages. Y'all heard the same thing I did. And that this diaper rash was not advanced, that it was something like what a child would experience. And those of you with children know how quickly diaper rash can occur. Literally in a few hours, a child can develop diaper rash. So, contrary to this implication that Sheila Murray laid in her own filth for days, then why doesn't that show in what they found when in the region that diaper would have been? Why do we have pressure sores that, as you've heard, can begin very quickly, even in places where you're getting professional care? Bed sores can happen fast. You find one that's in the beginning stages, not one that's advanced. You find diaper rash, which can develop very quickly. She wasn't laying there for days in her own filth, or this stuff would have been more advanced, and there would have been proof of that. This all circles back to what I said in the beginning, that this case comes down to what you believe about the term knowingly neglect. Now, I know willful is added into that, but as you saw, the definition of willful is voluntarily and knowingly, so it's kind of a repetitive term there. But I'll address both of them. And the state has not proven that knowing neglect has been there. Even if you feel that they've shown a legal definition of neglect, they've not shown that either of these two knowingly neglected their mother. They haven't shown that. Not beyond a reasonable doubt, certainly. We talk about a person acting knowingly with respect to the result of the person's conduct. A person is aware the conduct's reasonably certain to cause the result. Have they shown that about either one of these two? No, they haven't. They haven't shown that to either one of these two beyond a reasonable doubt. They failed to show that anything that you want to call neglect was done to her knowingly. What it shows is this is a poor family that was over its head. That's what they are. That's what they were. They ran over their head. The situation, their mother declined beyond what they were capable of handling. And they didn't even know it. They didn't know they were in over their head until it was too late. You know, Karen Murray, she was put in a situation that she tried to make the best she could. You know, she wasn't capable of handling it and didn't know it. Does that make her a murderer? Does that make her brother a murderer? Does that mean that they voluntarily, that they willfully, that they knowingly neglected their mother? No, it does not. The proof is shown in this case that the state is not able to show you beyond a reasonable doubt that they're not able to meet their burden with regard to the element of knowing, that they've not been able to do that. And where that leaves us, folks, is that the right choice, the only choice for you as a jury, is to find these defendants not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bard.